CO2 and other greenhouse gases are at record levels in our atmosphere. There are many sources of this pollution, and so we as individuals can feel powerless to act to reduce global emissions. Many people believe in climate change science and are calling for immediate action. The protesters and green ambassadors are targeting big polluters from industry and power generation. But what about the small things that, if done by many, might also have a significant benefit? As a safe driving company, there is some advice which some will find hard to swallow, but if we can spread the word, we can make a difference. Now, I need to acknowledge that in conducting our training business, we've owned a lot of vehicles, driven a lot of kilometres, and burnt a lot of fuel. Privately, I've enjoyed racing cars, drifting, and four-wheel driving, pursuits which are impossible to argue are eco-friendly. Many others work to live and use their income for recreational pursuits for their own pleasure. All of us have to consider the pollution our pastimes are generating. But this Fuel for Thought video is not anti-car or anti the enjoyment of driving. It is about driving smarter. Our licensing system does not teach drivers about the wastage caused by driving oversights that cost you money in your private vehicle, cost your employer money in a company vehicle, that create pollution and achieve nothing in terms of productivity. On cold mornings, you see the gases a vehicle spews out, but normally, these gases are invisible, and so we don't realise the quantity of gas coming out of the tailpipe. In this demonstration, an airbag jack is connected to the vehicle's exhaust pipe. It takes 60 seconds to fill with the exhaust gases from idling engine revs, so a bootful of gas is generated every minute just from idling. That is why many vehicles now have an auto stop-start function to limit the time spent idling when waiting at traffic lights or in traffic queues. In many global cities, it is illegal for engines to be left on, idling away only for the benefit of the occupants, whilst creating unnecessary air pollution. In Australia, we have many safety rules for school pickup zones, and yet we allow vehicles to idle away, pumping toxic gases into our children's lungs. In other countries, drivers are encouraged to not leave the engine running in school zones, and this habit spreads to other times a vehicle is stationary. If idling is pollution generated for no gain, what about excessive engine revs? Using the same car and the same airbag jack, it fills in 30 seconds with high engine revs. Imagine then how much gas a vehicle with a larger engine is producing. So driving in a lower gear than is necessary for prolonged periods creates excessive engine revs, burning more fuel and releasing extra pollution. Some drivers use the wrong gear unintentionally, but others get addicted to the engine feeling powerful, or the exhaust sound, or their air intake sucking hard. I'm not anti the modified exhaust, the induction sound, or the blow-off valve. The owner can modify their vehicle. But I am hoping those who drive with their windows down, addicted to the sound that they are creating, realise that this is both wasting fuel and producing greater emissions. I'm not a hypocrite. I drive on a racetrack and know I'm using fuel and producing pollution whilst improving my driving skills. I just wonder if those showing off or driving aggressively on the road can rationalise their actions, especially when they still queue up behind you. Now, if you see exhaust gases and it's not cold weather, the vehicle has a problem, and this needs to be rectified. If you see smoky vehicles, you can report the vehicle's registration to the EPA. And we're only discussing light vehicles. Buses and trucks that are excessively idling, over-revving and badly serviced are producing far more air pollution than the average driver. But again, no eco training is provided when these drivers get their license. In motorsport, you don't see smoky vehicles, as the event organisers would remove such vehicles from competing. But with diesel vehicles being banned from some regions, there is a counterculture of choke on my smoke. It is an interesting human behaviour to modify the vehicle to generate so much pollution. These vehicle owners celebrate fitting the biggest, most modified exhaust system. The diesel particulate filter is usually removed, which essentially makes the vehicle unroadworthy and voids its warranty. The same show-off attitude applies in car culture, and if you talk with exhaust engineers, many of these systems actually reduce the performance of the vehicle. Here the owner has illegally cut his exhaust to fit spacers, which create a greater sound output. One wonders if he knows it is melting the heat shield under his vehicle. Kudos to the mechanics who refuse to work on illegally modified vehicles, but there is always someone who will do the modification work. Typically, this exhaustaholic is also pro burnouts and sees driving as a competition to beat other road users. One wonders, when these drivers grow up, will they regret their driving or celebrate that they had a chance to do it? It is at this point I'm renaming this video from eco to ego motoring, because a lot of vehicle emissions are the result of the human need to impress others. In motorsport, they are known as hot lap heroes, those who can drive on the edge and set an amazing lap time, but their car will suffer for it. Then there are endurance drivers who can peel off consistently smooth and fast laps for long periods without overly stressing the car. On the road, there are those that think it is a qualifying session, and they do whatever it takes, no matter how dangerous or damaging, to get in front or stay in front. But cheating is not winning. Here the speed limit is 70 kilometers per hour, and so those driving faster than you are simply breaking the law by more. If you change your mindset from "I need to outperform the other driver" to "I will let the bad drivers be in front," then you will likely regain a love of driving and be more efficient at it. When moving, a vehicle has kinetic energy and momentum that will be lost from applying the brakes and stopping the vehicle. Often you see drivers accelerate hard from a traffic light, only to queue again at the next one. Why do they keep doing this over and over again? The traffic lights are actually linked together to move bunches of vehicles travelling at the speed limit through successive green lights. So when you next get a green light in a city, you should accelerate smoothly and travel near the speed limit, as your progress is ultimately controlled by luck with stoppages. There is no need to tailgate and no need to speed if you're ultimately just going to queue up again. You might feel justified for pulling out and passing the slower vehicle. It might make you feel that you are a better driver, or that your vehicle is faster, or that you are saving time. But when they pass you again, really, you are just an inefficient driver. The dashcam lens doesn't show it, but if you know the road, you can look ahead and predict the traffic light sequence. I've already seen the lights ahead turn red, and without speeding, I'm able to control my speed to arrive just as the lights turn green. Any faster, and I was going to lose my kinetic energy and have to stop and then accelerate again. I'm therefore maximizing my efficiency. In this example, let's use the large crane truck as an example. When there are large and slow to accelerate vehicles, other drivers often jostle to get into the other lane to get in front. But since traffic lights control progress, all their effort is usually wasted. The lights ahead have just turned amber. This is a dual-lane arterial road. It has a 70 km/h speed limit, and a few hundred metres ahead is 4 sets of traffic lights that are all close together. The lights change green, and the other drivers who I sense are racing each other accelerate harder than me. Their choice. The car behind me is by now tailgating very aggressively, with hand gestures being given and the car weaving side to side racing style. I am soon to turn right and am permitted to be in this lane, especially since it is a 70 km/h zone. I have deliberately accelerated efficiently and am travelling at exactly 70 km/h on my speedometer, which I realise is slower on the GPS dashcam. The driver behind is so close, I can almost smell his breath. I wonder what he thinks of my driving. I assume he is angry that I'm in the right lane. But watch this. Because I know this road and travel it every day, and because I accelerated efficiently and drove at the 70 km/h speed limit on my speedometer, the right turn arrow comes on exactly as I arrive. I don't need to brake. Now my tailgating friend follows me around the corner. Maybe he also travels this route every morning. It is a dead-end industrial estate at 7 a.m. So the tailgater was actually helped to save fuel and brake wear by following me, as I was timing my driving to make the next lights. Had I not been there, or had I moved over, he would have surely arrived at those traffic lights before the red arrow, thus wasting fuel, having to use his brakes, and having to accelerate again. Since he continued to tailgate me, I don't think he is applauding my good driving. The same road on a different day. These lights change and the other driver chooses to accelerate hard and races to a red light ahead. The dashcam doesn't show it, but I can see the lights ahead are red. Again, because I time my run, they change for me as I start to slow. This repeats at the next lights, with the other driver waiting at the red as I arrive and get the green. So if you want to reduce fuel consumption and emissions, see aggressive driving that gets a vehicle to red lights first for what it is, inefficient, not talented. Tyres are always losing pressure. 1 to 2 psi per month diffuses through the rubber. So by the time your tyre looks underinflated, it has been reducing your fuel consumption, resulting in more fuel being burnt to move your vehicle. It takes more effort to push a wheelbarrow with flat tyres. The same applies to your car engine. It is needing to work harder to move underinflated tyres. The lower pressure has also been wearing your tyres prematurely, costing you money and reducing your vehicle's contact with the road, especially in wet conditions. So, correctly inflating your tyres helps the environment in 2 ways. Less fuel is burnt per kilometre travelled, and your tyres last longer. Maybe then we should start praising the drivers who make the effort to check their tyre pressures. They are, after all, reducing their wastage and increasing their safety. Wider tyres provide more traction, but this increases rolling resistance and leads to more fuel consumption than standard width tyres. High quality off-road tyres are heavy due to their superior internal construction, and so they too lead to increased fuel consumption. If you need such tyres for the terrain you drive on, so be it, but some motorists only fit aggressive and wide tyres for eco motoring. There are eco green tyres available which have special construction and design to reduce fuel consumption. So for long distance highway motoring and inner city commuting, the correct tyre choice can save money on fuel and reduce emissions. If you learn to drive a manual, it's likely you were only taught how to change gears and not when to change. Of course, you know the red line is the limit, but has anyone ever explained to you the power band and how changing up gears as soon as possible saves fuel? Most vehicles are tuned for mid-range engine torque. Therefore, revving the engine past the power band misses the peak torque and maximum power output. Redline rev heads are the drivers who mistakenly think that to rev their engine hard makes their vehicle accelerate faster. But an individual may choose to rev their engine hard and waste the fuel they paid for. On one hand, it's freedom of choice, but is it really achieving anything? Then for the automatic drivers, do you use the eco mode, which limits engine revs and as such improves fuel economy? If you run a fleet of company vehicles, let's hope your employees are not engaged in such wasteful behaviour. Otherwise, they are literally tipping fuel and money down the drain. It is actually easy to discover the inefficient drivers. With the fuel tank refilled, the driver on the left is predicted to get 100 kilometres less out of the tank than the driver on the right, yet they're in the same model vehicle. The lead-foot driver, who accelerates too hard, is likely wasting a lot of fuel, which is producing excessive emissions. For many seconds, they are instantaneously burning over 50 litres per 100 kilometres. There are driver monitoring systems which can monitor acceleration and braking forces and score a driver on smoothness and efficiency. But a simple fuel card account can do the same. Recording all fuel purchases versus the distance travelled will show the more efficient drivers. Remember, aggressive driving not only burns more fuel and produces more tailpipe emissions, but it also results in faster tyre and brake pad wear. Each hard accelerate is literally throwing someone's money away. Imagine how bad the aerodynamics are if a vehicle were to be driven with all the doors open. In fact, this stunt is hard to achieve at speeds over 50 kilometers per hour, as the wind force, known as drag, forces the doors shut. Vehicle manufacturers increasingly factor in the coefficient of drag into a new vehicle's design in order to reduce fuel consumption. Underbody trays and diffusers help to push air away from the wheels and under the vehicle, so you shouldn't remove these aerodynamic aids. But many cosmetic additions made to a vehicle reduce its aerodynamic efficiency and therefore increase the fuel it burns. If you have a choice of vehicle for a journey, a passenger vehicle is more efficient in terms of its drag area, plus is lighter in weight than a large SUV or utility. Windows down driving also impacts on fuel efficiency. It is better to keep the windows closed and use the air conditioner. At the times when your roof is loaded, your vehicle will burn significantly more fuel due to the air resistance and extra weight. When you don't need to carry items on the roof, they are best removed. Likewise, towing mirrors and bike racks should be removed and all unnecessary cargo taken out of the vehicle. High speed limits are increasingly rare. What you quickly discover when driving, at speeds above 120 kilometers per hour, is the rate of fuel consumption increases exponentially. This is caused by the rolling resistance of the tyre, which results from both the aerodynamic resistance and the ground-to-tyre contact forces. A vehicle driven in the correct gear, with correctly inflated tyres, is most efficient at speeds between 60 to 100 kilometers per hour. Some trucking companies have started to speed limit their fleet to 90 kilometers per hour to save fuel and reduce emissions. If you are towing, consider your travel speed versus your fuel efficiency. Plus, ensure you have correctly inflated tyres and consider the aerodynamics of your load and trailer. Because ultimately your trailer will increase the drag and become more unstable the faster you drive. Vehicle ownership in global megacities is much lower than in Australia. Residents adopt alternative transport options. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is that working from home and online conference calls are different experiences, but are ones that eliminate the need to travel. Finding a parking spot, parking fees, sitting in traffic queues, toll charges, dealing with bad drivers are all eliminated. So too is the fuel consumption, pollution, tyre and brake wear. It is timely, therefore, to consider how many and what type of vehicles we need and whether alternative forms of transport can suit our lifestyle and needs. Electric and hybrid vehicles are here to stay. Fossil fuel is running low, so eventually we will all need to make a switch to an alternative fuel source. If we can educate drivers about efficiency and generate behaviour change, what can be saved? Well, a lot. Because there are over 20 million vehicles in Australia alone and an estimated 1.4 billion vehicles in the world. Each of those 1.4 billion vehicles is releasing about 2.5 kilograms of CO2 for every litre of fuel that is burnt. So a typical driver travelling 25,000 kilometres per year in a vehicle burning an average of 9 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres is creating over 5,000 kilograms of CO2 each year. For a driver who travels 25,000 kilometres per year, if they are wasting 2 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres, based on a fuel price of $1.85 per litre, this individual will save $925 per year on fuel, with additional savings from less tyre and brake wear and chance of crashing and speeding fines. If there are 50,000 drivers like this who are each wasting 500 litres of fuel per year, that is 25 million litres of fuel saved. This saves around 60,000 tonnes of CO2 depending on the fuel being burnt. For a driver who travels 40,000 kilometres per year, if they are wasting 3 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres, based on a fuel price of $1.85 per litre, this individual will save $2,220 per year on fuel, with additional savings from less tyre and brake wear and chance of crashing and speeding fines. If there are 25,000 drivers like this who are each wasting 1,200 litres of fuel per year, that is 30 million litres of fuel saved. This saves around 70 to 80,000 tonnes of CO2, depending on the fuel being burnt. Another way to look at it, if every vehicle burnt a mere 5 litres per year less fuel, that would result in 17.5 billion tonnes less in CO2 being released. The hardest part, though, is spreading the word. So why don't you try and influence 5 other motorists? There is plenty of online material from vehicle manufacturers and environmental agencies to share with your contacts. I have invested my time and money to make this video for my children and their future children. We all need to look at how we are acting and what, if anything, can be done differently. So much driving is unproductive. The wastage that is unpredictable and no fault of the vehicle operator is systemic. But the consumption of finite resources caused by ego and ignorance is alarming. The choice to do what you want with your income and your vehicle is still yours. But at the end of the day, I will make my future choices from a position of awareness. Let's hope you can too. If you are in a company with a vehicle fleet, you can make a bigger difference by educating your personnel and making smart purchasing choices. And if our efforts don't solve global pollution, well, at the very least, it will save money on vehicle operating costs and likely reduce crashes and the associated road trauma, because efficient driving is safer driving. Videos like this are part of the Safe Drive e-learning defensive driving course, Driver Training Reinvented. Contact us about purchasing or reselling.